is the same. When Saul came to know that God had rejected him and he had anointed David as the king of Israel, he was enraged. Saul attempted to kill David quite a number of times, directly and cunningly, but God protected David from his hands. And Saul cast the spear, for he said, I will pin David to the wall. But David escaped his presence twice. Let us see the Saul David fight. How Saul attempted to kill David but could not. 1 Samuel 18:11. And Saul cast the spear, for he said, I will pin David to the wall. But David escaped his presence twice. Remember, Saul was a king and he was a warrior too. Very difficult to escape, but David escaped. Now Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him, but he had deported Saul. He was afraid, he was not able to kill. Therefore, Saul removed him from his presence and made him his captain over 1,000, and he went out and came in before the people. And David behaved wisely in all his ways, and the Lord was with him. Then Saul said, Thus you shall say to David, the king does not desire any dowry, but 100 foreskins of the Philistines, to take vengeance on the king's enemies. But Saul thought to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. Very cunning plan. Saul made a cunning plan to eliminate David through the hands of the Palestinians. 1 Samuel 18:25. Then Saul said, Thus you shall say to David, the king does not desire any dowry, but 100 foreskins of the Philistines, to take vengeance on the king's enemies. But Saul thought to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. So when his servants told David these words, it pleased David well to become the king's son-in-law. Now the days had not expired. Therefore David arose and went, he and his men, and killed 200 men of the Philistines. And David brought their foreskins, and they gave them in full count to the king, that he might become the king's son-in-law. Then Saul gave him Michal, his daughter, as wife. Foreskins of Palestinians. They had no circumcision at that time. So the present circumcision for the Muslims, Sunnat, it was not there earlier. Circumcision was introduced among the Arabs only after Prophet Muhammad came. Thus Saul saw and knew that the Lord was with David, and that Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him. And Saul was still more afraid of David. So Saul became David's enemy continually. King became enemy, but the king could not eliminate him. Edification. This passage gives us insight into the past. During the happening of the above events, during 1000 BC, the Philistines, who are the present-day Palestinians, were uncircumcised. David gave their foreskins only as a gift in lieu of marrying Saul's daughter Michal. All the Gentiles in the Old Testament were uncircumcised except Ishmael, the son of the Egyptian maidservant Hagar. Muslims doing Sunnat circumcision was a later origin, probably after 610 AD. King Saul made yet another attempt to directly kill David. Now the distressing spirit from the Lord came upon Saul, and he sat in his house with his spear in his hand. And David was playing music with his hand. Then Saul sought to pin David to the wall with a spear, but he slipped away from Saul's presence, and he drove the spear into the wall. So David fled and escaped that night. 1 Samuel 19:1. Now Saul spoke to Jonathan his son and to all his servants that they should kill David, but Jonathan, Saul's son, delighted greatly in David. Now the distressing spirit from the Lord came upon Saul as he sat in his house with his spear in his hand, and David was playing music with his hand. Then Saul sought to pin David to the wall with a spear, but he slipped away from Saul's presence, and he drove the spear into the wall. So David fled and escaped that night. Saul also sent messengers to David's house to watch him and to kill him in the morning. And Michal, David's wife, told him, saying, If you do not save your life tonight, tomorrow you will be killed. So Michal let David down through a window, and he went and fled and escaped. God saved David when Saul and his men neared him to kill him. The supernatural protection of God ensured the safety of David. The Bible God is truthful to his words and saved his anointed servants. Now let's see how God saved David. in a crucial situation. 1 Samuel 23:26. Saul neared him with 3,000 men. 1 Samuel 23:26. Then Saul went on one side of the mountain and David and his men on the other side of the mountain. So David made haste to get away from Saul, for Saul and his men were circling David and his men to take them. Very critical situation. Very critical situation. They come very close. But a messenger came to Saul saying, hurry and come, for the Philistines have invaded the land. Philistines have come to invaded the land. So therefore Saul returned from pursuing David and went against the Philistines. So they called that place Rock of Escape. God saved David in this manner.